everybody. Welcome to Fast Money Football. I'm Albert Vartanian, joined by the man himself, James Sharman. James, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing just great. Thanks, Albert. Excellent.
They're the hot topic right now. They need a new manager. Rafa Benitez fired after losing to Norwich 2-1. Everton in somewhat of a relegation scrap, but they shouldn't be because that's not the quality of their team, James. But where do we go from here? Roberto Martinez linked, Duncan Ferguson, and even Wayne Rooney. Where do Everton go?
Yeah, it's a great question. I agree with you. This Everton team isn't nearly as bad as they've shown this season so far. Now, numerous injuries have been a real issue, and I really feel sorry for Rafa, who is a really good manager. I mean, he's got a great CV, even though in recent years it hasn't been great. But you look at the players he's missed over the last number of months, from Dominic Calvert-Lewin in particular, who's been a wonderful player the last couple of years, injured, out, throwing COVID. He's really been up against the wall. So he's never had really his full strength squad. So the guy coming in, quite frankly, it's a good job to take because they've hit rock bottom, I think. I can't think them being much worse than they've shown so far. And they're just teetering on the brink of that relegation fight, as you mentioned there. So a new man comes in, and I think as they get healthy, with a bit of a bounce from a new manager, they can get out of that race. And suddenly he looks great. So who's it going to be? Well, I love the Roberto Martinez link just because he did a great job there before. I think he's a really excellent progressive manager who coaches attacking football. Now, why he'd leave Belgium for Everton, that's the big question. And I guess, getting back in the Prem is a big step for him. But if he has a good World Cup with Belgium, then he could pick and choose where he goes. Now, he says he's got unfinished business at Everton. I do believe that. So it would be a great pick if they can pry him out. Wayne Rooney would be, the romantic's choice, right? It would be fantastic. The boy wonder returns to where it all began, and he's doing just a great job at Derby County right now in a terrible, terrible situation there. Now, Derby County could not exist in a month. That's how bad they are financially. But despite all that, he has just got those players playing for the fans, I think, as simple as that. And despite the huge, I think, 21-point deduction, if not for that, they'd be a mid-table team this season, which is quite incredible. But is it too soon to make that jump to Everton? Probably, but I mean, if they came to him, I can't see him saying no. And then you mentioned Big Duncan Ferguson, who in the past has stepped in there as an interim manager and has done a really good job. But is he a coach or a manager? It's a big, big difference. He might be happy doing what he's doing, right? He's got a job for life there. He can coach, be involved in first team duties for whoever's managing. But maybe it's time he gets the job somewhere. But I haven't seen him linked with any other club either. So it's not as if he's going out there and making himself public saying, I want to be a manager in football. So, they're the three big names. We'll see who would be my pick right now. If you could get Graham Potter from Brighton, I think he's ready for that next big step. It would crush Brighton, during the season, of course, but he's a really good young progressive manager too in the Roberto Martinez ilk. So he'd be my pick if they can get him. But I still think it's a good job, Albert. I don't think it's a bad job at all. I think it's been a terrible season so far, but that's a proper football club with a proper fan base who deserve better. And I think whoever gets it is going to take it in the right direction.
I think so too. It just seems like there's a lot going on there there's issues off the pitch as well.
Yeah.
And I like to always talk about teams and their identity. When it comes to Everton, what is their identity outside of, just being a football club that's been there for a while, a proper football club, like you mentioned? I don't know if a manager can necessarily fix that. Maybe that can be the case. Maybe a manager like Potter comes in who's got a fantastic system. And really for him, those players at Everton, those core players can really fit into his type of system. I just don't know where they go from here. If bringing in a manager is what's going to fix this.
We know what I mean. It's the old argument, right? What can a manager really do? It comes down to the players and who ownership bring in to get those players.
Yeah.
But we've seen at other clubs. You see at Chelsea how Tuchel just turned that team around. We've seen what Klopp did at a very beleaguered Liverpool team as well. Now I know they're bigger clubs. Sorry, toughies. Bigger clubs with more money, with more talent. But I think the right man can turn them around. And it's amazing what winning does, right? If Graham Potter comes in and has a good start, wins a few games, plays attacking football, the fans are going to embrace him. The whole feeling around that club is going to feel better, right? So, I mean, there's more to it, I agree, than just a manager. There's a lot more. I mean, they've misspent. They've spent a lot of money, that club. That ownership under Mashira has spent so much money the last 4 or 5 years. One of the highest spending clubs in the Premier League, believe it or not. But they brought in poor players and bad choices. So they've got to get better recruitment. That's number one.
I remember we thought the quote-unquote resurgence of Everton was going to be under Carlo Ancelotti. He brought in a brand new midfield, Alan, Decore, James Rodriguez. They go on that incredible run at the beginning of the season, and then it kind of just petered out from there. And he left off to Real Madrid. James Rodriguez is in Saudi Arabia somewhere. So Everton, a lot of issues there. A lot of managers as well. Rafael Benitez, Ancelotti, Marco Silva, Sam Allardyce, Ronald Koeman, and Roberto Martinez.
I forgot about Allardyce. I put a tweet out yesterday, some smart-ass tweet about, it's time to bring Big Sam back into the... Oh, he's already been there.
Yeah,
I completely forgot about that.
24 matches, 34 points. So not too bad. Better than most.
Well, they survived, right?
Leicester and Spurs, both teams had their matches postponed due to COVID. What did you make of that North London derby postponement? Because it's shady to me.
God, it's just an absolute joke. It's disgusting. They had one COVID case. One. Now, they had lots of injuries. Well, sorry, that's football. And Arsenal loaned out 2 players last week. And now they're saying, we haven't got enough players. Well, no kidding. You loaned them out. I mean, it does my head in. And now we're seeing Burnley trying the same crap. This is a problem right now. Teams are taking full advantage of the charity shown by the Premier League because of COVID. And teams with one injury, with one COVID case, 2 case, they're saying, we can't play. We haven't got a full squad. You've got a youth team, right? It used to be you'd see these kids come up. And sorry, it's football. I know it's not ideal playing kids against top-flight opposition, but that's the reality. If you're not deep enough, it's your fault. And Spurs have every right to be furious about that. This is a real issue. And everyone's doing it. I mean, let's not just pinpoint Arsenal. They're all going to try and do it. They're all cheats. It's professional soccer, Albert. They're all cheats. They do what they can. But yeah, that infuriated me. It really did.
And look at Leeds. I mean, against West Ham, they brought on 2 teenagers making their Premier League debut, and they still got a result against West Ham. So anything is possible. Yeah, that was an excuse for Arsenal. Many of the teams, I'm sure Sean Dyche saw that. And you know what? Maybe we can play off this as well.
I think I could do that too, couldn't I?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Why aren't we doing that? I lost Chris Wood last week. It's time to...
How nuts is that? To me, that's one of the craziest transfers for some time in the Premier League.
You wonder why he's furious.
To another.
Yeah, it's one thing to lose a player because, listen, you put a buyout clause in a contract, that's down to you, right? But when the team that you are competing directly with to avoid relegation is the one that signs that player for 20 million, I like Chris Wood. I think he's a decent player, right? Who doesn't get many opportunities at Burnley, given the way they play. But he's a good player, but 20 million quid for Chris Wood. Wow. I mean, it's not quite the level of marquee name that I think the Newcastle fans were anticipating. But he's actually a good Premier League player, and I'm sure they'll buy more. But it's not Kylian Mbappe going there, is it? Let's be honest. But if you're Burnley, you can't score goals to begin with, and now you sell arguably your best striker to your main rival. Oh, man, game's gone, Albert. The game's gone.
It doesn't make any sense. Chris Wood, I always think about, you mentioned the 20 million for Chris Wood. Something that always pops up, one transfer, is Moussa Sissoko from Newcastle to Spurs. And I think they paid 30 million, and I was always shocked by that. It ended up being a half-decent signing, but still, the numbers don't really add up. They don't make sense, inflation and all that. But back to Spurs against Leicester. I want to touch on Tottenham for a second. Chelsea just took care of business in the semifinals. The second leg, it almost looked as if Conte already decided, hey, we already lost this. Let's just put out a second team. If we get a result, we get a result. If not, we got bigger things to worry about and getting into top 4 in the Premier League.
Do you think he was sending a bit of a message to
I think so.
Daniel Levy, saying, hey, you better sign me some new players, otherwise this is what you got?
That can get ugly soon. And I tweeted out after that second leg, I'm like, this Conte thing isn't going to work, is it? It doesn't seem like it's going
right. He tried the same thing at Chelsea. Remember that? I think the first game of the season, I think it was, and after the window closed, and I forget who it was now, played some kid up front. And just making a statement saying, well, you didn't get me who I wanted. He threw all his toys out the pram. And you're right, Conte, he signed a short contract. He's already going public saying, I need to be supported in the transfer window, putting pressure on Spurs, which, Daniel Levy just hates. Don't put pressure on me. So I think there's a lot to follow with that team the coming months, because he might well walk this summer, which, if you're Spurs, you have Antonio Conte, one of the top managers in world football. You finally got this guy. No one thought you'd get Antonio Conte. So when you get him, you surely make it an environment that he'll succeed in. If they blow it, that they're so early and he walks this summer because you're not going to spend money, then I don't know why you would have gone for him in the first place. It seems pointless.
And then it's like, well, who's going to do this job? If he can't do it, who can? I mean, Pochettino was talking about this near the end of his tenure. He's like, this is going to be messy. We need to rebuild. No one listened. And they brought in Nuno Espirito Santos. Before that, Jose Mourinho. That didn't work out. So I feel like this is almost like the end of the road here with this management with Spurs, because if you're not getting results from him and you're not backing that manager, who are you going to back?
You may as well give up, right? Spurs should just up tools and give up. Stop playing in that case. Resign from the Premier League, sell their stadium, sell the crest. Because I know what you're saying though, right? Because they've gone every route possible, and if they're not, every manager needs to be backed in the market, in the transfer window, right? And Spurs, I know they still have this amazing stadium that isn't cheap, right? And they're kind of finding the same thing that Arsenal found a few years ago now, right? It's not always easy to compete and contend post-new stadium because of how much it cost. But, I mean, I'm assuming they had conversations with Antonio Conte when they signed him saying, yeah, you want what in January? Okay, yeah, we'll give you this much money. And they still might, right? Hey, listen, it's middle of January. They still might spend some money. But from what I've heard so far, most rumors I hear about them selling players, selling Dele Alli, for example, rather than bringing guys in. So we'll see what happens. But it's a really important couple of weeks for Spurs because, this will, I think, make or break Conte's reign at that club. He'll leave. He will leave if he's not backed this January. If they back him, then they've got themselves a fantastic manager with an improved squad. Yeah,
they're linked to Adama Traore, which is interesting. But if someone can turn that player around and turn him into something, it's probably Antonio Conte.
He scored a nice goal, didn't he, on the weekend, though?
He
scored a great goal, finally.
Yeah. Not known as a goal scorer, which is crazy because he can do everything but.
Everything but, yeah. I mean, Christ, there's not many more fun players to watch in the field than Adama Traore.
Yeah.
But apart from scoring goals, obviously.
So Leicester, Spurs, Leicester plus 205, Tottenham plus 105. Spurs, they have a bunch of games in hand. Really good opportunity to make the case for top four. Do you think they get the job done this week?
I think they will. Despite what I just said there, I think they will, just because Leicester are so inconsistent and they've lost Jamie Vardy for 2 months. And Vardy is so much more than just this talisman and their most prolific goal scorer. He's the heartbeat of that side. They're not the same without him. Simple as that. They don't pose the same threat. They can't play quite the same way without him. So, I like Leicester a lot. I like Brendan Rodgers a lot. We still have fond memories of what they did 3 or 4 years ago now. Is it 3 or 4 years ago now? Wow. Whenever it was, it's crazy. But yeah, they're having a tough time this season. Injuries have just crushed them. A lot of teams are going through this. And I think Spurs have that ability to turn it on when they have to. And coming off that pathetic performance against Chelsea last week, they owe their fans. So I would say I would take Spurs for the win in this one.
I'm with you. I'm with Spurs as well. I think there's going to be goals in this one. Brentford, Manchester United. You called it. You said Aston Villa draw or win against Manchester United. They pulled it off. Some way, somehow, they were down 2-0. On comes Felipe Coutinho. And what an impact that was.
I was screaming at the TV, saying, you've got to be kidding me. United were not playing well at all. No. Villa had goals disallowed. They hit the woodwork a couple of times as well. I mean, they played really well in that match. And then on comes Coutinho. And it's like the Coutinho of Liverpool era, not Barcelona or Bayern Munich or wherever he's been the last 3 years. He looked great coming on, and he's not match fit, right? He hasn't played in a month. He started, I think, just 5 games this season, but he shows what he can do, what a pure class player can do when put in the right position. And, Steven Gerrard got him for a reason. He played with him. He knows what he can do on and off the field, right? This guy's a player that can really get those young Villa players, and there's some really good young players there, and show them and teach them how to be a professional. And, I thought it was a really good performance and well worth the 2-2 result there.
And Manchester United, if there's one thing that I've really noticed over the past few seasons, especially this season, these teams, Aston Villa, mid-table teams to the bottom half, they're not afraid to play United. It's not like, let's go into this match and, if we can get a point, that's a good result. This is like, we can get something against this side. We saw as soon as Coutinho came on, the attitude in the Manchester United players changed immediately. And that what hasn't been the case for some time now, but it is. And it shows you where United are at. And they're not in a good place.
It's a really good point you make there. That fear factor, which they used to have in swathes, right? I mean, you speak to people that played against them in the 90s and 2000s, and they were terrified to go Old Trafford because they knew they'd get a smacking. They'd be smashed, right? They have that. You see them in the tunnel. I just got these images of them in the tunnel with Van der Sar and Roy Keane there, and like just chest pumped up, like, we're not gonna beat you just on the field, we'll beat you in the alleyway as well. Use a hockey reference there. That's how they were, right? And when was the last time we saw that? I don't know. It wasn't even towards the end of Fergie's reign. They won the last Premier League before he retired, which was maybe his best achievement because that was not a good team. But they found a way. But prior to that, I mean, they were just wonderful. It's been years and years and years. And even with Ronaldo, they haven't really found that fear factor, and he knows it. And he's, like we discussed last week, Albert, how he's made some comments, and he's trying to inspire those players. But, you look at Anthony Martial, a guy that should be part of the solution, saying he wants out and essentially refusing to join the squad this past weekend. You look at Marcus Rashford. I don't know what's happened to him. Everyone wants to see that guy succeed. Great guy, but he's been poor this year, the very best. They spend 75 million on a winger in Jadon Sancho, and like that is not the Borussia Dortmund Jadon Sancho. Only Edison Cavani looks decent right now, isn't he? I mean, he's an old man. He's over the hill, and he's the best player at the moment. He's the guy that brings fear, the one guy. So I think there's a lot of issues there, and there's a lot of talk today that they might find their permanent replacement to Ole before the season ends. So they're kind of losing faith with Ralph Rangnick, a month in? So yeah, it's long, yeah. If you're not a United fan, it's fun to watch from the outside, put it that way.
Oh, it is. It's fantastic. And if if you want to back Brentford, you're like, well, they can get a result here. They're at home. They score the majority of the games at home. United don't really keep clean sheets. You have to give Brentford a fighting chance against this side. I know they just lost the Liverpool side without Salah and Mane. I understand that, but that's a different beast playing Liverpool at Anfield in the Premier League. Now you're going to have United, a shaky United at home after giving a 2-goal lead against Aston Villa. I think Brentford's going to be up for this and think, hey, listen, we can have a go here.
Definitely they'll give them a run. There's no doubt. Brentford have been doing it all season long. I know the home form isn't quite as good now as it was earlier in the season, but they'll give everyone a good fight. But, it's a tough one. I look at United, and as much as their performances are poor, they're still grabbing points somehow, right? Have losing many games. They're getting too many draws, obviously, but they're finding ways to get points. And my gut tells me in this one, they'll have enough to get 3 points and just quell the heat for another week or so.
Yeah.
But I mean, I like your Brentford pick, Albert, I do, because they're a fun team, and they're one of the, if not the great stories of this season so far, because they should be safe. I think 30 points should be enough, and the table looks pretty good for them right now. But I don't know. Every time I write United off completely, they find a way to claw back 3 points. So I'm just kind of being burned in the past.
Yeah, despite what's going on collectively with that team, individually, there's so much quality there that one player can change the game. Ronaldo, Cavani, Rashford, Sancho, you name it, Fred, McTominay, these guys can still score goals. I want to touch on Brentford quickly, linked with bringing in Christian Eriksen. I don't know if you saw that, but what are your thoughts? Because if that happens, he's fit, I love it.
I didn't see that. Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
According to the Athletic.
Wow. Well, hey, listen, the Athletic's generally right about everything. Listen, if Brentford can do it, I would do it. Although, I mean, I feel bad for Eriksen because, he lost his job at Inter Milan because the Serie A have rules about you cannot play with pacemakers. And essentially, he's got a pacemaker, I believe, inserted in his heart. And they say that he'll be just fine and that it's not a threat. But I don't know. I mean, let me ask you, Albert, if you're watching Eriksen line up for Brentford that first game, are you a little bit nervous?
Oh, absolutely. That's the only thing I'm thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. And man, that's a class player. He's a class player. He would straight away be Brentford's best player at a real element. And their first star signing, I think, ever, the way they recruit players.
Yeah.
You know what? From him, if he's confident, you got to trust the player, right? If he's confident he can play still physically, and his people around him who you would think are looking out for him say he can play properly, and Brentford's medical staff, which are going to be as good as any club in the Premier League, will test him and say, he's good to go, then you do that in a second. You do it. Absolutely. I'd be nervous, sure, but I would love to see it.
Yeah, he did an interview in Denmark, I think last week or a couple weeks ago, and he was asked that by the interviewer, how do you feel? Are you worried that something might happen if you go out there? He's like, not at all. I'm not even thinking about it. He's like, I just want to get back out there and play. So he's confident. He says his doctors are confident. And the deal would be, according to the Athletic here, a 6-month deal. So obviously it's a short-term deal to see what would happen, what can happen. And obviously, like you said, if he's 80% of the player that he was, he's still Brentford's best player. And I would just love to see him. What a great story that would be.
And it's not as if he blew his knee out, right, or a hip.
Right.
You know, it was a cardiac issue, so he's coming back still very fit and very healthy, and should have the same skill set that he had before. So yeah, it'd be wonderful. Yeah, I mean, I guess if you look at it, those kind of situations are more traumatizing for those close to him and the teammates who saw it all. From his standpoint, he's walking towards the ball, he collapses, and he wakes up on the field, and what happened here, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying, of course, it's traumatizing for him, right? But it's more traumatizing for those that witnessed the whole thing and thought he was
Mhm.
dying. Right, him, it's like a blackout. So he's a competitor. He's got that burning drive to be a footballer still. He's not an old man by any stretch. So good for him if he can do it.
Yeah, I hope so. I'll never forget that day, but let's not touch on
Oh,
that anyway. Let's talk about some La Liga action. James, Valencia, Sevilla, and Sevilla are Real Madrid's only real contenders this year. But was it 5 points behind Real Madrid?
yeah.
So this is a big opportunity for them to close that gap because I don't see anyone else doing it except them. Did they get the job done here against Valencia?
Yeah, I mean, I would think so. Valencia, a mid-table team. Let's hope they get it done, because otherwise, good night and sweet dreams to anything, looking like drama and theater in La Liga. They're going to finish second place. I think they're 10 points up in third right now
Yeah.
under Lopetegui, who's a good story in himself. If you don't, recall, obviously back in Euro, was it Euro? No, the World Cup. It's before the
Woke
World
up.
Cup. As Spain coach, and then he announced on the eve of it he's joining Real Madrid after the tournament, and then they fired him. Said, "Nope, too bad, you traitor." And then he brought in Hierro, and it all went downhill from there. So, but he's a very good manager, very respected. You don't become Real Madrid manager or Spain manager without having, your skill set. So he's doing a very, very good job there. They're fantastic defensively, aren't they? Very hard to concede, low scoring games. But yeah, I think 3 points are in the bag in this one. And let's hope so, because it's a bit of a joke this year, isn't it?
I think so. And Real's kind of running away with it. But Vinicius and Benzema would be two of the, best pairings in world football right now, at least in European football. But back to that game, I think I'm going to go Sevilla. Clean sheet as well on top of the win. I think you can get that around plus 160. They close the gap on Real Madrid. So that's it for Fast Money Football. I'm Albert Vartanian with my co-host, James Sharman. Thanks for watching.